Novum Testamentum Graece is the Latin name of an original Greek-language version of the New Testament. The first printed edition was the Complutensian Polyglot Bible by Cardinal Francisco Jiménez de Cisneros, printed in 1514, but not published until 1520. The first published edition of the Greek New Testament was produced by Desiderius Erasmus in 1516. Today the designation Novum Testamentum Graece normally refers to the Nestle-Aland editions, named after the scholars who led the critical editing work. The text, edited by the Institute für Neutestamentliche Textforschung, is currently in its 28th edition, abbreviated N828. The Nestle-Aland text is the primary source for most contemporary New Testament translations, although most are translations of the edition that was available at the time of translation. The Nestle-Aland text is also the standard for academic work in New Testament studies. The title Novum Testamentum Graece can also be applied to the United Bible Society's edition, which contains the same base text. The primary difference between the NA and UBS editions is that the latter is aimed at translators and so focuses on variants that are important for the meaning, whereas the NA includes more variants for textual criticism. Methodology. The Greek text is presented as what biblical scholars refer to as the critical text. A critical text is an eclectic text compiled by a committee that examines a large number of manuscripts in order to determine which reading is most likely to be closest to the original. They use a number of factors to help determine probable readings, such as the date of the witness, the geographical distribution of a reading, and the likelihood of accidental or intentional corruptions. In the book, a large number of textual variants, or differences between manuscripts, are noted in the critical apparatus, the extensive footnotes that distinguish the Novum Testamentum Graece from other Greek New Testaments. Most scholars view uncial text is the most accurate. However, a few authors, such as New Testament scholar Maurice A. Robinson and linguist Wilbur Pickering, Arthur Fastad and Zane C. Hodges, claim that the minuscule texts more accurately reflect the autographs or original text than an eclectic text like an N828 that relies heavily on manuscripts of the Alexandrian text type. This view has been criticized by Gordon Fee and Bruce Metzger among others. Since the majority of old manuscripts in existence are minuscules, they are often referred to as the majority text. It is worth noting, though, that the majority text as a whole is classified by the editors of the N828 as a consistently cited witness of the first order, meaning that whenever the text presented differs from the majority text, this is recorded in the apparatus along with the alternate reading. Other consistently cited references include the full corpus of papyri manuscripts available to the authors, as well as a wide range of other manuscripts, including a selection of both minuscules and uncials. The Novum Testamentum Graece apparatus summarizes the evidence for, and sometimes against, a selection of the most important variants for the study of the text of the New Testament. While eschewing completeness, this edition does provide informed readers with a basis by which they can judge for themselves which readings more accurately reflect the originals. The Greek text of the 28th edition is the same as that of the 5th edition of the United Bible Society's The Greek New Testament, although there are a few differences between them in paragraphing, capitalization, punctuation and spelling. The critical apparatus is different in the two editions. The UBS-4 edition is prepared for the use of translators, and includes fewer textual variants, but adds extra extra material helpful for translators. Editions. History. The first edition, published by Eberhard Nestle in 1898, combined the readings of the editions of Tischendorf, Westcott and Horton Weymouth, placing the majority reading of these in the text and the third reading in the apparatus. In 1901, he replaced the Weymouth New Testament with Bernhard Weiss's text. In later editions, Nestle began noting the attestation of certain important manuscripts in his apparatus. Eberhard's son Erwin Nestle took over after his father's death and issued the 13th edition in 1927. This edition introduced a separate critical apparatus and began to abandon the majority reading principle. In the apparatus only a few minuscules were included. Kurt Aland became the associate editor of the 21st edition in 1952. At Erwin Nestle's request, he reviewed and expanded the critical apparatus, adding many more manuscripts. This eventually led to the 25th edition of 1963. The most important papyri are newly discovered uncials as 0189, a few minuscules. Occasionally also lectionaries were taken into account. The great manuscript discoveries of the 20th century had also made a revision of the text necessary, and with Nestle's permission, Aland set out to revise the text of Novum Testamentum Graece. Aland submitted his work on R to the editorial committee of the United Bible Society's Greek New Testament, and it became the basic text of their third edition in 1975, 4 years before it was published as the 26th edition of Nestle-Aland. Members of the editorial committee of the United Bible Society's Greek New Testament comprise UBS 1, 1966, UBS 2, 1968. Kurt Aland, Matthew Black, Bruce Metzger, Alan Wickgren, UBS 3, 1975. Kurt Aland, Matthew Black, Carlo Maria Martini, Bruce Metzger, Alan Wickgren, UBS 4, 1993. Barbara Aland, Kurt Aland, Johannes Karavidopoulos, Carlo Maria Martini, Bruce Metzger, UBS 5, 2014. Barbara Aland, Kurt Aland, Johannes Karavidopoulos, Carlo Maria Martini, Bruce Metzger, in cooperation with the Institute for New Testament Textual Research, Munster. In 2011, the Global Board of the United Bible Societies appointed a new editorial committee that will prepare future editions of the Nestle-Aland Novum Testamentum Graece as well as of the Greek New Testament. The committee consists of Christos Karakoulis, David Parker, Stephen Pisano, Holger Strudwolf, David Trebish and Klaus Wachtel, in all but the Catholic epistles. The 28th edition of Nestle-Aland reproduces the text of NA 27 and presents a revised critical apparatus and a rewritten introduction and appendices. In the Catholic epistles, the text has been edited in line with the Editio Critica in its use of the coherence-based genealogical method. The result is a change in just over 30 places. A more complete set of variants is listed in the multiple-volume Novum Testamentum Graecum Editio Critica Maya. A small number of textual changes in the most current edition were incorporated in the 28th edition of the Nestle-Aland, published in 2012. Papyri 117 to 127 were used in this edition. Current editions. The NA28 text is published by Deutsche Bibelgesellschaft, Greek, Biblia Sacra Utriusque Testamenti Editia Hebraica e Graeca, ISBN 978-3-438-05250-6, Diglot, Das Neue Testament Griechisch und Deutsch, ISBN 978-3-438-05406-7 Nestle-Aland. Nestle-Aland Greek English New Testament, ISBN 978-3-438-05408-1. Novum Testamentum Graece Latin, ISBN 978-3-438-05401. 2. Nuovo Testamento Greco-Italiano, ISBN 978-3-438-05409-8. Accuracy of the New Testament. In the text of the New Testament, Kurt Orland and Barbara Orland compare the total number of variant-free verses, and the number of variants per page, among the 7 major editions of the Greek NT, concluding 62.9%, or 4,999 7,947 agreement. They concluded thus in nearly 2/3 of the New Testament text. The 7 editions of the Greek New Testament which we have reviewed are in complete accord, with no differences other than in orthographical details. Verses in which any one of the 7 editions differs by a single word are not counted. This result is quite amazing, demonstrating a far greater agreement among the Greek texts of the New Testament during the past century than textual scholars would have suspected. In the Gospels, Acts, and Revelation the agreement is less, while in the letters it is much greater. For over 250 years, New Testament scholars have argued that no textual variant affects key Christian doctrine. Influence. Earlier translations of the Bible, including the Authorized King James Version, tended to rely on Byzantine-type texts, such as the Textus Receptus. A number of translations began to use critical Greek editions, beginning with the translation of the Revised Version in England in 1881 to 1885. English translations produced during the 20th century increasingly reflected the work of textual criticism, although even new translations are often influenced by earlier translation efforts. A comparison of the textual and stylistic choices of 20 translations against 15,000 variant readings shows the following rank of agreement with the Nestle-Aland 27th edition.